All right, guys, we're here in Norway. LUMIX flew us out for the new S1RII. You know, I don't want anybody to get undone, so I'm gonna keep this shill free. I just want to talk about the negatives. I just want to be honest. I just want you guys to trust me. So there's no shilling, no thrills in this. Just fucking kidding, guys. We're in fucking Norway. This camera is amazing. Let's get undone. All right, guys, before I go deep, let's do a quick disclosure. This video is sponsored by Storyblocks, and I am beyond grateful to be able to work with them. But I know some of you guys have wrong feelings about creators going on press trips and making videos around them. If you're one of those people, feel free to click off. I'm not making you watch this video, or feel free to leave a nasty comment and help the engagement on this video. Either or works with me. This video isn't sponsored by LUMIX. Yes, they flew into Norway, but I respect my audience's intelligence. Why would I want to lie? Personally, I'm excited about this camera because it does a lot of things that I've been wanting a camera to be able to do, and this thing finally does it. And I know a lot of my audience is cut from the same cloth, and they probably are gonna love it too. And we're stuck. All right. We almost made that. Okay. This isn't good. All right, guys, I filmed for almost 2 weeks straight talking about this camera, and honestly, I found it all incredibly boring because I already know everybody's gonna be covering the same shit. So guess what? I'm scrapping it all because I want to get down to the brass tacks on why I'm so excited for this camera, and that's the image quality.
Get off of this lonely road.
Everyone's already doing a video on this, so we're out here having more fun with it. My SR1, whatever it's called, is on the cinema arm on the Bronco. And then we have a handheld setup with some Blaze Arcados or remises later. But Connor also came out the video about the SR2. He's also going to be doing SR2 versus A7R5 from the Sony.
S1R Mark II.
Whatever. So he's also doing that video, and that's what he's going to be using during this shoot. But you guys can see the rig up here. This is what I like about this camera. The image quality alone, I'm confident using it on shoots like this now. Now the rolling shutter, we're gonna see, you know, the actual performance overall. We're gonna end up seeing after this shoot, if it can actually be used professionally. And at the end of the video, I'll answer it. Because obviously I gotta go through all of it too. It's too early to say. We saw our little spec commercial. I have zero clue if we got everything we needed. You know, part of directing is just make sure everybody's getting the shots that you need, but you don't always get to see it on shoots like this. But anyways, 5 hours of shooting and we knocked that out. How do we knock that out? 1, I trusted the camera. 2, I trusted the team. That comes from, I'm not trying to brag here, but I think a lot of people have a misconception about me being on YouTube. I've been doing production type stuff for over 10 years now. I'm able to put together a proper team for things like this, a really nimble run and gun team, plan it out, have it all in my head, and try to work concisely to get things done. Let's go over the sensor, because that's probably one of the most important things to this new camera here. And later on, we'll even go through a bunch of footage just so I can really prove it to you guys why this camera is just crushing it when it comes to color fidelity. So this isn't official, but I'm pretty confident that this is the same sensor that's in the DJI Ronin 4D 8K. This is what I'm excited for. This is Luis.
How's it going?
Luis has helped me a shit ton when it comes to the Ronin 4D. He's one of the ops that I always hire. This is what's magical. We've always dreamt of this camera, but in a mirrorless body. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what this is now. We have the same exact sensor, so I'm excited. When I deliver this footage, it's gonna be able to match, I think, pretty well. Color sign's gonna be different, obviously, but the way the texture, the way the color fidelity holds, it's gonna match between both of these. I'm assuming. We'll find out. Do you remember how the skin tones hold like a certain way on this AK head?
Yeah,
this does the same thing.
Oh.
Yes.
to where I have to turn down the skin tones.
Yeah.
I have to do that a lot in here because it holds the saturation so well.
On the 8K, yeah.
There's still a reason to own that for sure, but
Yeah.
that's a great B camera.
Fourth axis really does make a huge difference. It makes it look Hollywood quality. I know people are going to cringe off of that. That's the reason fucking Hollywood's using this camera more and more and more though. Just wait.
I'll put a link in the description to all the videos I've done with that. If you guys go watch them, you'll see me talk about how that camera and that sensor combo is the first time I've used the camera without needing RAW to get crazy color fidelity. We're getting the same type of quality in this camera. So there's a couple things that gave it away. The first major giveaway was the dynamic range expansion mode. Standard mode that has a faster readout, and then there's that extended dynamic range mode, which gives you another stop or two of dynamic range, but it increases the rolling shutter. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's putting off little pointers in my head. The second thing was when I actually went in and started to color grade the footage, the way the skin tone told when we're shifting white balances and the way the saturation between like greens and yellows and the skin tones and the blues, the ambient saturation, and we'll get into all this when I actually go through and break down the footage.
All right, guys, so obviously we're in Norway and they're crazy strict about drones. But guess what? This video is sponsored by Storyblocks.
Guys, I'm gonna show you how freaking useful Storyblocks is within 60 seconds here. I'm just gonna type in Norway. Sadly, we were there during horrible weather, so I'm just going to put in Norway snow. And still, there's just so many freaking options. We drove 4 hours in total to find some northern lights, and we did not find those suckers. Guess what? I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to put some of this footage in there as well. Now, this isn't my first time using Storyblocks. I've actually used this before in a feature-length award-winning documentary that I directed and shot myself. I did not have enough time to get wildlife and landscapes and all that, so we just used stock footage. So you guys can imagine, you can use this from everything from your content creation to YouTube, all the way up to award-winning documentary that you can find on Apple TV and Amazon. I'll be sure to put a link in the description down below if you guys want to try out Storyblocks yourself. Again, this is a hack that even pros are using and no one just talks about it, but here I go, sharing the secrets. We're going to test the standard mode and the high dynamic range mode. So in standard mode, your base ISOs are 200 and 1000. And high dynamic log range mode, where the hell it's called, it's 400 and 2000. When I first found out about the 4 different base ISOs and the S5 I was like, I don't like that. In use, it's actually pretty great. Outdoors, it's awesome being able to use 200 and 400 ISO because you need less VNDs. When it goes to indoor stuff, I love putting it into the dynamic range expansion mode because then we get a 2000 base ISO. I have tested the ISO at like 6400. At times, it's incredibly noisy. At other times, it looks great. I don't have any definite answers on if it's good or bad in low light. I don't know. So when I do this test, I'm going to utilize the in-camera false color now to make sure the exposure is even. I'm pretty confident that the dynamic range expansion mode is increasing dynamic range mainly towards the highlights. So you overexpose a little bit more to the right and recover more of your shadows. That's how I utilize this. So we're in standard dynamic range mode, false colors on. In order to protect the highlights on my seat here, F22, and they're still a little bit peaking, but it looks okay. So this is a really extreme example, but this is gonna show you guys how much more details we could pull back. So you guys can see how dark this is, and that's purely just to keep the highlights on that seat kind of within exposure. So that's standard dynamic range mode. So now I'm going to stop this and we're going to go into dynamic range expansion mode, turn false color back on, and you can see the peaking's the same on the highlights, but we recovered a lot of the shadows on the bike. Dynamic range expansion mode is just giving us another stop or two of extra exposure. What this is going to help you guys with is, you know, with mirrorless cameras and digital cameras, it's safer to expose to the right. Usually when I expose all the way to highlight peak, and then I bring it right below that. So I know my highlights are just on the verge of peaking, but they're not. And so that lifts all the shadows up in the exposure. So in standard mode, obviously you can still get a decent exposure, but when you're in high dynamic range mode, it gives you another stop to expose, just to push that exposure a little bit further, and that's going to give you another stop or two in the shadows when you're exposing to the right. Now, with all that out of the way, let's finally get into the color grading so I can show you guys how to expand the dynamic range in post and what happens. Usually on cameras, the colors are muted and dead, and you're literally just lifting the noise floor. You can cheat, you know, dynamic range, but when the color fidelity is not there, it's not the same thing. This camera, this sensor specifically, it's the same thing with the 4D 8K by DJI.
it holds color fidelity in all those expanded ranges. It's next level the way it's doing it without having to use RAW. So let's go into that now. All right, you shills, it's time to do our footage breakdown. This is the only way that I can think of to really show you what this camera is capable of. So we'll go over a few clips. So I want to start on this shot because we have a lot of mixed light in here. We're inside of a Tractor Supply Co. So if you have one near you, go in there and see how mixed up that light is. We did use a light that will be coming out in a couple of months. It's a little 100-watt LED light with a little tiny softbox, and we just use that just to kick some light on his face. So let me show you what the LUMIX S1RII conversion LUT looks like on here. That's what we got. Let me turn on my exposure correction. So you see I'm just using my HDR wheels, and I have my gamma set to the Panasonic V-Log. And then let me go turn on my white balance adjustment. So you can see I'm doing a cooler look. So I want to feel really cold and muted in comparison to when he gets on his horse and he starts galloping. Off the bat, you can see how much color fidelity we have in the skin tones. So we're going to start on this clip because, you know, we have good skin tones here, but then I'm going to show you when you start stretching the footage why this camera is so important. So stay tuned. But I'm going to go through on my own film emulation LUTs. I'll have a link down in the description below if you guys want to check these out, but they're my Roadrunner film emulations. There you go. From here, I made a window around the hat here. So I had to do that because the color of the hat was getting pushed all over the place because, again, of all the mixed lighting from the convenience store and the lighting we were using. This next note here, I'm basically tracking his face, and everything outside of his face I'm shifting the color balance once again. This is what's so important about the color fidelity on this camera. When you go and start pushing all the colors and the hues and the color grade, you don't want them to fall apart. So this sensor does an amazing job at saving all that details. You can even see the eye color in Chris's eyes right here. Like, this is truly wild. Let's go into his skin real quick as well. You can see we have red hues here, and then we have the natural skin tones here, and then all the tonality and the highlights, all the specular highlights on his skin here. You see they all have tonality to them. A lot of mirrorless cameras get rid of this info. Even the blue highlights over here, these are all really subtle things that really make a difference when you use actual cinema cameras. So again, the 4D 8K sensor and this sensor is doing a beautiful, magical job at holding color fidelity. Now let me show you the final piece of this grade here. I just go in and add some contrast. And then on this, I'm correcting my white and black points. And then film grain. I'm just using DaVinci's built-in Film LUT creator, and I'm just utilizing the grain on here. Now let's go to another shot where I could show you what I was talking about with the color fidelity and the black and white points. I'm just gonna throw my LUT on there again. I usually just start off with the nest. So let's start with that one, and then I'm gonna bring in my HDR wheels because that's how I always correct my exposures. On most mirrorless cameras, on a shot like this, all you would see is brown and then the black of the tire. If we were using like a red Komodo or the 4D 8K, we will get similar results to what we're seeing right now. What is it that you're seeing? Look at all the blue highlights in the tire here. This is ambient color tonality right here. On regular mirrorless cameras, this wouldn't really be here. If this was here, it would be blotchy. It would look more like color noise rather than actual color fidelity. So you see all the color fidelity that's being held here. Let's look at underneath my hat here. Obviously we have noise because we are stretching the heck out of this footage right now. So I'm just going to turn on a little bit, denoising here. I'm stretching this beyond what's natural. Nobody should be doing this, but this is going to make the point here about the color fidelity. One, look at the color tonality in my hat here. Let's then zoom onto my hair. So again, traditionally on mirrorless cameras, all this tonality gets lost. We're pushing the limits of this camera. Again, we're shooting an open gate just in the 420. You still see little brown bits of my hair. You can still see blue highlights on my hair and everything. It's rare to see this much color fidelity out of a mirrorless camera. Even look at my braid over on the other side here, all brown. Also look at my skin tones underneath the hat here. Those skin tones, this is where it gave it away that this was the same sensor as the 4D 8K. That's not official, but I'm pretty confident about it. The way that's holding the skin tones and it's separating those skin tones from the rest of the colors. You can even look at my jacket here. We're seeing some of the warm colors from the outside come in, hit the highlights on my jacket here, and then the rest of the blue lights. This is with LUMIX's standard 709 conversion. you can still see how much freaking colors in my jacket here. This jacket in person has a weird mix of black and brown leather on it. The camera's actually picking it up. You can see all the brown in my hair. You can even see little bits of blue highlights still hitting from the outside. This is truly, guys, again, this is beyond impressive that we're a 420 open gate on a little mirrorless hybrid camera. This is truly impressive. Again. All right, guys, I still haven't had a moment to unpack, so this is all the stuff from yesterday's shoot. My final thoughts. Can this new LUMIX S1RII be used for professional stuff? Obviously, you guys saw the footage for yourself. I've done some rolling shutter tests and stuff. It's not in this video. Maybe down the road, I'll do a more technical video. But the rolling shutter seems better than the S5 IIX. I could be wrong, but from the footage you guys have seen, it looked pretty solid to me. Even for the roller shots, if you have rolling shutter for those rolling shots, every little bump, you see it a little bit more. The rolling shots, we put it into the standard dynamic range mode, so we're getting that faster readout. To me, it looked just fine. All that footage, by the way, will be in future videos. There's like several videos that are gonna come from that shoot. But anyways, when Connor was operating and I was directing him, by the way, this is his camera and I'm filming on my S1RII. The way that he films is a little bit more smoother. All that as he swings it over, follow the movement. He'll start loading over, there you go. But then when I picked up the handheld rig, you guys can see how more intense I am when I film. I get way more close to the action. I follow every movement. But you guys will be able to see how I usually film stuff like this. Also, it's kind of embarrassing, my whole crew sneezing from the horses. Helping direct Connor, but he's naturally pretty good at capturing things. But I definitely film a lot differently. I like to get in as close as possible to talent and follow every movement, not being scared. And the two big struggles with that type of filmmaking is one, dynamic range, because I try to backlight everything, but more importantly is the readout speed. I don't think rolling shutter affects as much stuff as people think it does, but when you're filming action type stuff like that and you're moving the camera, you see it a lot more. After going through all the footage and using it on a more pro indie run and gun type set, I'm very confident with this camera now. The major issue with this camera, for me personally, it's this lens. This is the Blazer Apex 35mm. I also have the 50mm. I have fallen in love with this lens because it's a 1.33x anamorphic with autofocus, but it actually has 1.5x anamorphic bokeh. Sadly, Blazer does not make it an L mount. I don't know what the politics are when it comes to the L mount alliance, but it seems like a lot of the third-party lenses aren't making L mount lenses. I find this very annoying. LUMIX is making hands down the best anamorphic mirrorless hybrid do-it-all type cameras for all of us content creators, pro filmmakers, commercial shooters, like whatever it is. This camera can now compete with the top dogs, and it even does more, and it even does some things even better than some of those other top end cameras, which is crazy. But sadly, lenses like this, just they don't come in L mount, and I have no idea if they ever will. I'll be holding on to my Sony a7C II longer just because this lens only comes in E mount right now. If those don't come in L mount, this is gonna get limited usage, which is depressing because I absolutely love this camera. And I would literally, out of all the cameras I have right now that I use for filming, I would replace all those cameras with this camera. That's how good this is. I honestly haven't tested autofocus too much. I've been just using the Blazer Remus and Katos on this nonstop. I'll be doing some stills photography, utilizing the real-time LUTs and everything. Also, everything that was in this video was graded with my LUTs, my Roadrunner film emulations for LUMIX. Put a link in the description for those as well, but I'll stop rambling. Hope you guys enjoyed. And don't forget, I am filming on the S1RII right now, and I also have the Atlas Mercury 36mm on there right now. So you guys have seen a combination of some Blazer Katos, Blazer Remus, and Atlas lenses all mixed into this whole video. If you guys have any questions, want to see anything else from this camera, leave them down in the comment section below. I'm tired. I want Thai food. Ugh. Ugh. Bing, bop, boom, bop, bing, bop.
With the jacket part too.
Ow! Ow!
That was a full bite.